First impressions, there's a delta of detritus here and little sharp hoof prints just here. So it looks like Bambi's been in a lot. This is our entrance into the wood. Last year's dead hedge. That looks like badger. And this is this winter's firewood. And that over there. This is the dead hedge. And this appears to be a motorway with little sharp scrapes on it. So this is Bambi going in and out of the wood all summer long while I've been doing other things, and I was ill for basically 2 months. So the nightmare was the dead hedge would not have been enough, but it looks like from this regrowth, this was all cut last winter, it's actually worked very well. This winter we aim to cut this lot and knock all these over, including this oak, because the farmer's got a plan, if he's got the grant aid, to replace this fence. So we want this cut and shifted out there before he puts his fence up. Hopefully he'll do that in the summer, but I need to talk to him and find out when. And if we take these down, these are mostly sycamore with a hazel on the corner and one oak here, which is never going to make timber. And it's overhanging the fence, overhanging the field, so we knock all those over while the fence is down, which is good. And this is last year's cant. Oh, we have greater maize eaters. Don't know what would be big enough to bring a whole maize cob up here, but it looks like it has. And this is the regrowth. Usual story. I am 5'8", that's my eye level, so that's gone up 6 foot. These ones here, which in the afternoon are in the shade of these. See? It's about 1:30. So in the shade of these in the afternoon, and later in the day, and also in the mornings, because the sun goes kind of like that. It's in the shade of these. We're on a steep slope here. So this illustrates quite well the effect of edge shading. If you look at the height of this, so that's gone way over 6 foot, and look at the height of that, and you see that this is taller because it basically gets a little bit more light throughout more of the day. And if you compare, oh look, got a little cherry come up. These are ashes. There's more little cherries there, look. Whether that's a sucker, or the big cherries which are over there, or it's seeding, I don't know. Because root systems can go a long way. But anyway, I digress. So if we look at that, another cherry there, look, and hawthorns. And if you look at the height of the hazel compared with the height of the hawthorns, hawthorns are much younger. The hazel, the coppice stalls, have gone almost twice the height of the hawthorns. And if we look round the edges, we will see that there is no sign that Bambi's been in here. So my dead hedges, which have sunk down a little bit, don't forget, over the whole of the summer, have been adequate to the task of keeping evil Bambi out of the coppice. Because Bambi has assumed an aspect of evil, because there are a lot of Bambis around here. There's native roe deer. Ooh, look. That's a rare beast. That is a little hazel. Little seedling. That's nice. Basically, Bambi's assumed the aspect of demon because they do an awful lot of damage, because there are far more of them than there have ever been in the recorded history of the British Isles. not only the native roe deer, which would have been very rare in my childhood 40 years ago and more, and also my mum and granddad's childhoods, because they were all working and being brought up round here. Roe deer would have been very, very rare, and any that would have appeared, if at all possible, would have gone in the pot, because we're back to wartime now, and we're back to rationing. And before the wartime, we're back to the interwar years, which were a time of great hardship for various social and geopolitical and economic reasons. And not only have we got roe deer around here now, we've got sika, and as you saw as we walked in, there are a lot of sika. And you hopefully will have seen some of my other posts about the damage they do to coppice regrowth. But anyway, let's get the view from the top of the slope. In an ideal world, from the point of view of the regrowth, it would have been better to go all the way through here, because just over there this stops, and my neighbours have done coppicing in the past, and you get a lot more light, because light is extremely important to coppice regrowth. And these two old trees here cast a lot of shade. These ones over here, although edge effect and edge shading is always an issue that you need to consider for coppice and coppice regrowth, those are on the northern edge of the wood and are not much of an issue. And those are beech and ash. And ash casts slightly less shade anyway. Leaves come in late, go early, and the density of the shade is less than, say, a beech or a sweet chestnut or an oak. That's a standard, that's a canopy tree. Those, even though they are on the edge and casting no shade, those are canopy trees. This one here is a canopy tree. You see it's all dead topped. And that looked early in the year and last year like it was dying, but it's put on a fresh flush of growth this year and it's produced a huge set of seed. You can see all the chestnuts up there, even on a GoPro. See them palish yellow? This is not a canopy tree, that's one I didn't get around to. And this is the regrowth, which is pretty good. But if you look here, there's a gap. And in the gap, there's a couple of dead stalls. This one here, for instance. And there's another one further down. And we didn't have the right size stems to layer. All the stems in this were pretty big. It's 50+ year olds since it was last cut. So what I'm going to do is I've got a load of saplings in my lawn at home, which you might have seen on another post, and some of those will come up here and we'll plant them. I'd prefer to go natural regeneration, but I've got the seedlings, so I'll plant them anyway. There is a slight issue in that they're all descendants of one single tree, which is a wild type hazel, not from a garden centre. I know it's a British hazel, because I swiped it from somewhere I used to work. But there's a possible issue when you plant trees of moving diseases around. I've been watching the little seedlings, and although they've suffered from the drought over this summer, there's no sign of disease on any of them. I've also got a lot of nice fresh hazelnuts from that tree, so instead of putting in the labour of planting, because there's an area over there which needs planting up, I might just dip some hazelnuts in, which I think is the way that it would have been done, apart from layering, in the past, rather than raising trees, spending all the time and effort on them, when time and effort was hard to come by, and planting them. So I'll dip a load of hazelnuts in and see where that gets us. That was dead, so we left that as dead wood. But we've cleared most of the timber away, because I want all that to keep yourself warm this winter, which is why I'm desperate to come up here this week. I was due to come up first week in September, but I got a job, so a week's dive in ecology in South Wales, and I'm afraid that pays enough that I need to get hold of every one of those jobs as they come. Especially this year when I'd lost 3 contracts earlier in the year because I was ill for the best part of 2 months before I could be active again. So that's it. That's the count, and that's the job. Scan slowly around, we can see the patch of dense hazel. This tree here on the lean I intend to have out. There's another sweet chestnut behind this sweet chestnut, and I'm going to keep that. Right, let's stop that there and talk to you. While we're here, coming winter's work will be this, and that's all got to come out hopefully to the bottom of the site and then down that hill, with the same issues that we just talked about with access for my old van. I don't intend buying a four-wheel drive. I don't particularly want a four-wheel drive, but this lot will have to come out. The other way of doing it is to take it out through that fence you can just see in the background, but that's harder to get it through, and also everything will have to go slightly upslope. But this way it all goes down slope, and I use a mule, which is basically a modified wheelbarrow, so I use gravity as much as I can. This tree's coming out because that is the moment it's casting a lot of shade. There's another sweet chestnut of similar age behind this one, which will be the eventual replacement should it be needed, which is on a better angle. It's a better stem, and it's on the north east corner, and cast less shade over the coppice. Also, it's not growing at an angle like this one with a lot of mass up in the canopy. You can see the canopy here, and potentially threatening the integrity of the fence in the future, because the last thing the farmer wants is for the fence to go down with the tree taking it down, and the cattle one stormy night ending up in this woodland, which is a big woodland, and cattle can travel. They usually don't, but sometimes they do. So that's the rationale for this winter, and we will produce a similar amount of firewood as we did last year. We'll add to this dead hedge because this is starting to sink down. We want to keep Bambi out of this area, and we'll put a dead hedge along the top and a dead hedge along the fence, because we don't want Bambi jumping in over the fence. It's a long thin cant, which is inconvenient, but that's the way it goes. And in future years we've got a cant there and a cant there, and then all the 50-year-old hazel in here, or in this block, will have been done. And I will be 64, 65. I'll be 65. Whether I'll be physically able to keep going on another part of the woodland, I don't know. But we shall see. It's something to work towards, something to look forward to. Keeps me busy in the winter when I tend to depression with the pair of robins, with the short days and the dark days. And being out in the weather helps keep me sane, because I get as much daylight as possible. Start as early as I can, finish as late as I can. So coppicing for me feels a lot of different reasons. When I'm 65, yeah, I could go and buy the timber, but I'd prefer to keep going as long as I can, but actually keep cutting it myself. But when one is knocking on in years, not to be too melodramatic, one needs to think about the future. And this is the habitat that we have in here at the moment. Partly due to shading, and partly due to the activities of the dreaded Bambi, who hasn't been able to get into here. Let's have another look at this. The ivy in here is taller and thicker. That's ground cover ivy, but this has all been nibbled. And Bambi throughout the summer will have been nibbling other ground flora and things like this holly as it comes up. Because by protecting against deer, you're not just protecting the regrowth, you're protecting against browsing of the ground flora and also natural regeneration of trees. Because you want natural regeneration of trees, you want to be able to select which ones you keep, whether it's little hazels, little oaks, to eventually replace the standards, that's a gone wild raspberry. Also, or things like the cherry, which we saw some in there. But you need to select which ones you keep and which ones you don't keep. So this is the top of that big bank, and you can just see here, with everything, all the vegetation as low as it's going to get possibly, there has been at some point an entrance over there. I might talk to the farmer. When we do these cants, so one here, one the other side of last year's, we'll see if we can take everything out here. So that'll mean putting a gate in, because everything slopes downwards to about here, and then we get a bit of an upslope. But for long-term management of this woodland, it will be very, very handy to have an entrance here, which we haven't got at the moment. So there has been one yonks ago, but there isn't one at the moment. And here we'll finish. This is going to be quite a long video, even though it's a small subject, oak standard. And these canopy trees, because they're not standards, because they're not oak, are cherries, and there's a lot of them in here, and they're all clones, all descended probably from one individual gene, spelled G-E-A-N, wild cherry, Prunus avium, not bird cherry. That's something different with a different Latin name, confusingly. It's only confused me for a while. And this is potentially a parcel of quite valuable timber, because if you took those out, they would again sucker, and they would then be pushed up nice and straight by the reinvigorated coppice. This is all overstood hazel, not derelict like that down there. This has been cut within the last 20-25 years, but as far as it goes for firewood, it's of no interest to me because it's all too small. And it's of no interest to a coppice worker, a hazel worker, because it's all too wibbly wobbly, and it's grown up in the shade of these cherries, and it's too mimsy. But if you were to take some cherries out, produce a parcel of timber, leave some of the younger stems like this one, take these ones. There's a couple of ones over there, not these. There's one beyond, which is really hoary and old, no good for timber. Leave him up for the birds, and leave the younger ones, and reinvigorate your coppice and produce some saleable timber at the same time, if you can get it out. And you could get it out straight the way through here, especially if you timed your felling in here to go with coppicing and to go with putting this access in. And if you came in the summer, ground disturbance and compaction damage on basically an unsurfaced woodland floor will be kept to a minimum. But you would need to box clever doing that, rambling on a bit longer, by felling these so they are what's called benched. So you fell them in the winter when the sap is down, fell them, leave them in tree lengths, and leave them on lengths of timber so they're supported above the ground. That makes extraction easier if you're skidding it out, and also means they don't deteriorate with water coming up from the ground and fungi coming up from the ground, because cherry, although a nice decorative timber, is not naturally durable. All these are things that you have to think about when you're managing your woodland, especially if you're managing your woodland to maximise biodiversity and allowing for some income. And that's something I believe in extremely strongly. Income shouldn't take overwhelming precedence, as it does in a forestry model, which would basically have you coming in here, knocking all these over with a big machine, knocking all of these out, and then ripping it out at a time to suit yourself and to suit the markets. See my recent post on Loxley Wood down in Somerset. Right, finish that up there, go and do some work.